Welcome to the Voices of Real Life. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. What happens when the person you trust the most betrays you in the worst possible way? Join me as I reveal the shocking moment I discovered my wife's infidelity, and how I confronted the painful truth that turned my life upside down. In this heartfelt journey, I explore the emotional aftermath of betrayal, the struggle to protect my daughter, and the unexpected support from friends that helped me find my way back to happiness. This isn't just a story about heartbreak, it's about resilience, healing, and reclaiming your life after the storm. Don't miss this eye-opening account of love, loss, and the strength to move forward. The sound of my key turning in the lock barely registered above the frantic pounding on our front door. I stopped in my tracks, my hand frozen on the doorknob, trying to comprehend who could be making such a ruckus. "Open up. I know you're in there," a woman shouted from the other side. When I swung the door open, I found a young woman standing there, her eyes wide and fists clenched. "Can I help you?" I asked, somewhat bewildered. "Are you Jake, Elena's husband?" she fired back without waiting for a response, pushing past me into the hallway. "Yes, I'm Jake. Who are you, and what's going on?" I inquired, trying to make sense of the situation. She spun around to face me, her expression a mix of anger and desperation. "I'm Rachel Matthews, and your wife is sleeping with my boyfriend." The ground seemed to shift beneath me. "What? This has to be a mistake." Rachel let out a bitter laugh. "No mistake. I have proof." She rummaged through her bag and pulled out a collection of photographs. "Here, take a look for yourself." With shaking hands, I accepted the photos, each one hitting me like a punch to the gut. There was Elena, my wife, wrapped in passionate embraces with a young man I didn't recognize. The timestamps indicated they were taken recently, just over the past few weeks. "Who is he?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "Troy Henderson, my boyfriend, well, ex-boyfriend now," Rachel replied, her fury seeming to wane, replaced by raw pain. "He's one of her students. Can you believe that? A damn student." My legs felt weak as I sank onto the couch, unable to support my weight any longer. "How long has this been happening?" Rachel shrugged. "A few months, I think. I only discovered it last week when I stumbled upon some texts on Troy's phone." "And you're certain it's Elena?" "My Elena?" I asked, needing confirmation. "Unless your wife has an identical twin who's also a professor at the university, then yes, I'm certain," she replied firmly. I continued to stare at the photos, struggling to reconcile the woman in the images with the person I thought I knew. "Why are you telling me this?" Rachel's eyes flashed with intensity. "Because it needs to end. I tried confronting Troy, but he just gave me a bunch of lies. I figured that maybe if her husband knew." "You thought I could put a stop to it," I finished for her. She nodded in agreement. "I'm sorry to have to break this news to you, but wouldn't you want to know?" My mind was racing. "Yes, thank you for telling me." Rachel hesitated, her expression shifting slightly. "What are you going to do now?" "I'm not sure yet, but I'll take care of it." She nodded, appearing somewhat relieved. "Good. They both deserve whatever consequences come their way." As she reached for the doorknob, she paused. "I'm truly sorry, Jake." "Really?" Once the door closed behind her, I was left alone, grappling with the shattered remnants of my life. The photos felt like they were searing my skin, yet I couldn't tear my eyes away from them. How could Elena betray me like this? To me, to our marriage, to her career. I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over Elena's name. No, confronting her right now wasn't the best idea, not until I had more proof, more information. I needed to approach this intelligently. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Sam Pierce's number, a private investigator I had teamed up with on a software security case a few years back. He picked up on the third ring. "Sam, it's Jake Green. I could really use your help with something sensitive." "Jake. Long time no speak." "What's going on?" he responded with a hint of surprise. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "I need you to find evidence of my wife's affair." There was a brief silence on the other end. "Damn, Jake. I'm really sorry to hear that. Are you sure?" "I have photographic evidence, but I need more, texts, emails, videos if possible. I want to make sure this is ironclad." "All right, I can handle that. But, Jake, are you sure you want to go down this path? Sometimes it's better not to know everything." I tightened my grip on the phone. "I need to know the full extent of what's been happening behind my back." Sam sighed. "Okay, I'll start digging. Give me a couple of weeks, and I'll keep you updated. After hanging up, my eyes landed on a framed picture of Elena and me from our wedding day. The joy captured in that moment felt like a cruel joke now. I turned the frame around, unable to bear looking at it any longer. I trusted you, I murmured to the empty room, and you threw it all away. Anger began to simmer within me, a slow-burning fire in my chest. Elena had no idea what was coming, but she would. Oh, she would. The next 2 weeks turned into a unique kind of hell. I went through the motions of daily life, all while carrying the heavy burden of betrayal. Elena sensed that something was off, but I brushed aside her concerns with vague explanations about work stress. Every smile, every touch, every "I love you" from her felt like a knife twisting in my gut. How many times had she come home to me after being with him? How many lies had she told? To escape, I buried myself in work, staying late at the office to avoid being home. When I was there, I watched Elena closely, noting every text, every phone call, every unexplained absence. It was torture, but I needed to keep up appearances until Sam could deliver the evidence I so desperately sought. Finally, after enduring 16 agonizing days, my phone buzzed with a text from Sam. "Got what you need. Meet at the usual place." My heart raced as I quickly replied, "On my way." I told Elena I had a late meeting and headed out the door. The usual place was a quiet coffee shop where Sam and I had met during that long-ago case. When I arrived, Sam was already there, a thick manila envelope sitting on the table in front of him. "Hey, Jake," he greeted me, his expression serious. "How are you holding up?" I slid into the booth across from him. "I've been better." "What did you find?" Sam pushed the envelope toward me. "It's all in there, emails, texts, photos, even some video footage." "And Jake?" "It's bad. Worse than you thought." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and began to sift through its contents. The emails laid bare their secret meetings, and the texts were filled with pet names and declarations of love. There were more photos, some so explicit I had to look away. "How long has this been going on?" I managed to choke out. Sam's voice softened. "Based on what I found, at least 6 months, maybe longer." 6 months, half a year of lies and betrayal. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. "There's more," Sam continued quietly. "The guy she's with, Troy Henderson, he's not just any student. He's one of her grad students. She's on his thesis committee." The implications crashed over me like a freight train. She could lose her job over this. Sam nodded in agreement. "Absolutely. It's a clear violation of university policy, not to mention the ethical implications." I leafed through more of the evidence, each revelation fueling the growing fire of my anger. "What about him? This Troy kid?" "From what I gathered, he has a reputation as a charmer, a bit of a player." "But Elena? She seems to think it's the real deal. There are emails discussing a future together, even talking about her leaving you." That was the final straw. I slammed my fist on the table, making our coffee cups rattle. "Like hell she will." Sam leaned back, studying me intently. "What are you going to do, Jake?" Taking a deep breath, I tried to steady the rage surging through me. "I'm going to destroy her. Both of them. They want to blow up my life. I'll return the favor. Jake, I know you're hurting, but be careful. Revenge can be a dangerous game." I met his gaze, my determination solidifying. "I appreciate your concern, Sam, but I know exactly what I'm doing. Elena made her choice. Now she'll face the consequences." Sam sighed. "All right, it's your call. Just don't do anything you can't come back from, okay?" I nodded, gathering up the evidence. "Thanks for everything, Sam. I really mean it." As I left the coffee shop, my mind was already racing with plans. My first stop would be the University Ethics Committee. Elena had no idea what was about to hit her. The next morning, I called the university and requested an urgent meeting with the Ethics Committee. I was connected to Dr. Amelia Foster, the committee chair. "Mr. Green, this is Dr. Foster. I understand you have a sensitive matter to discuss." "Yes, Dr. Foster. It concerns my wife, Professor Elena Green, and one of her students. I have evidence of an inappropriate relationship that I believe violates university policy." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "That's a very serious allegation, Mr. Green. We'll need to see this evidence." "Of course. When can we meet?" "Given the nature of the accusation, I can convene the committee this afternoon at 3 p.m. I'll be there." The rest of the morning blurred by as I prepared my presentation. By 2:45, I found myself outside the committee room, a laptop and file folders at the ready. Dr. Foster greeted me, her face a mask of professional concern. "Mr. Green, thank you for coming. The committee is ready for you." I stepped into the room, facing a panel of 5 stern-faced academics. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice," I began. "I wish I were here under better circumstances." Dr. Foster nodded. "Please, present your evidence." For the next hour, I laid out the case against Elena and Troy, emails, texts, photos, each piece painting a damning picture of their affair. The committee members' expressions shifted from shock to disgust as I walked them through the timeline. "As you can see," I concluded, "this relationship has been ongoing for at least 6 months. During this time, Professor Green has continued to serve on Mr. Henderson's thesis committee, raising serious questions about academic integrity." Dr. Foster removed her glasses, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Mr. Green, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention. This is indeed a grave violation of university policy and ethical standards." Another committee member, a silver-haired man I came to know as Dr. Richards, spoke up. "What are you hoping to achieve by presenting this to us, Mr. Green?" I met his gaze steadily. "I believe the university needs to take appropriate action. My wife's behavior has compromised her position and the integrity of the institution." Dr. Foster nodded. "We'll need to conduct our own investigation, of course. However, based on what you've shown us, it's likely there will be serious consequences for both Professor Green and Mr. Henderson." "I understand," I replied. "I'm prepared to fully cooperate with any investigation." As the meeting came to a close, a sense of stern satisfaction washed over me. The first domino had fallen. Elena's carefully crafted world was about to collapse around her. 3 days later, the call came. Dr. Foster's voice was heavy with regret. "Mr. Green, we've completed our initial investigation. The evidence is conclusive. We will be terminating Professor Green's employment, effective immediately. Mr. Henderson's academic future is also under review." "I see," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. "Thank you for informing me. There will be a formal hearing this afternoon to inform Professor Green and Mr. Henderson of our decision. Given your role in bringing this to light, would you like to be present?" Part of me wanted to decline, to avoid witnessing Elena's face as her world crumbled. Yet a darker part of me, consumed by anger and betrayal, longed to see it unfold firsthand. "Yes," I heard myself say. "I'll be there." The hearing was scheduled for 4 p.m. I arrived early, my stomach churning with a mix of anticipation and dread. Dr. Foster ushered me into a small anteroom adjacent to the main conference room. "They don't know you're here," she explained. "We thought it best to inform them of the decision first. You can observe through the one-way glass if you'd like." I nodded, taking a seat by the window. Minutes later, Elena and Troy entered the conference room, looking bewildered and a bit anxious. My fists clenched at the sight of them together, the way they moved around each other with such easy familiarity. Dr. Foster and the rest of the committee filed in, their faces serious. "Professor Green, Mr. Henderson, thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Elena furrowed her brow. "What's this about, Amelia? Your message said it was urgent." Dr. Foster's voice remained cool and professional. "Elena, Troy, the ethics committee has conducted an investigation into your relationship. We have irrefutable evidence that you have been engaged in an inappropriate sexual relationship for the past 6 months, during which time Professor Green has continued to serve on Mr. Henderson's thesis committee." The color drained from Elena's face. Troy looked like he might be sick. That's not true," Elena stammered. "Who told you this?" "We have emails, text messages, and photographic evidence," Dr. Richards interjected. "There's no point in denying it." Elena's eyes darted around the room, panic setting in. "This is a misunderstanding. Troy and we're just close. He's a promising student. I've been mentoring him." Dr. Foster's expression hardened. "Elena, please don't insult our intelligence. The evidence is explicit and damning. Your actions represent a gross violation of university policy and ethical standards." Troy finally found his voice. "It was consensual. We're both adults. You can't punish us for falling in love." A ripple of disgust passed through the committee members. Dr. Foster fixed Troy with a steely glare. "Mr. Henderson, your so-called love has compromised the integrity of this institution and calls into question the validity of your entire academic career. As for consent, the power imbalance in your relationship makes that a very murky area." Elena seemed to crumble under the weight of it all. What happens now? Professor Green, your employment with the university is terminated, effective immediately. Mr. Henderson, your academic standing is under review. At a minimum, you will need to find a new thesis advisor and repeat any coursework or research conducted under Professor Green's supervision. You can't do this. Elena cried. My whole career, everything I've worked for. Dr. Foster's voice was icy. You did this, Elena. You and Mr. Henderson. You made your choices. Now you face the consequences. I had seen enough. I stepped out of the anteroom and into the conference room. Elena's head snapped up, her eyes widening in shock and horror. Marcus, what? What are you doing here? I looked at her, this woman I had loved and trusted, now feeling like a stranger. I'm the one who brought the evidence to the committee, Elena. She recoiled as if I'd struck her. You? But how? Does it matter? You lied to me. Betrayed me. Threw away our marriage for what? Some fling with a student. I turned to Troy, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Was it worth it? Ruining your academic career for a married woman twice your age? Elena found her fire then, springing to her feet. You had no right. This is my life, my career. And this was our marriage, I shot back. But that didn't stop you from destroying it, did it? Dr. Foster cleared her throat. I think we're done here. Professor Green, Mr. Henderson, you'll be receiving official documentation of today's decision. Please clear out your offices by the end of the week. As the committee filed out, I was left facing Elena and Troy. The anger that had been simmering for weeks finally boiled over. I hope you're happy together, I spat, because you've lost everything else. And Elena, this is just the beginning. I'm going to make you regret the day you ever thought about cheating on me. Elena's face crumpled. Marcus, please. We can talk about this. I made a mistake. I know that. But don't throw away our whole life together. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Our life together. You threw that away the moment you decided to sleep with your student. We're done, Elena. Enjoy the consequences of your actions. As I walked out, leaving Elena sobbing and Troy looking shell-shocked, I felt a grim satisfaction. Phase 1 of my revenge was complete, but I was far from finished. Elena and Troy had no idea what was coming next. The family courthouse loomed before me, a stark reminder of how my life had crumbled in just a few weeks. I straightened my tie, steeling myself for the battle ahead. My lawyer, Lucas Barton, stood beside me, briefcase in hand. You ready for this, Marcus? Lucas asked, his eyes sharp. I nodded. Let's end this. We pushed through the heavy doors, the smell of polished wood and tension filling my nostrils. Elena was already there, huddled with her lawyer in the corner. She looked up as we entered, her face a mask of defiance and fear. Marcus, she called out, taking a step toward me. Can we talk, please? I held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. Save it for the judge, Elena. Her lawyer, a sleek woman in a power suit, approached us. Mr. Green, I'm Jessica Holt. I'm representing Mrs. Green in these proceedings. I hope we can resolve this amicably. Lucas stepped forward, his voice cool. Miss Holt, given the circumstances, I think we're well past amicable. We'll see you inside. As we took our seats, I couldn't help but notice Troy slipping into the back of the courtroom. My blood boiled at the sight of him, but I forced myself to focus. All rise for the Honorable Judge Karen Hayes, the bailiff announced. Judge Hayes, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, took her seat, surveying the room with sharp eyes. We're here today for the divorce proceedings of Marcus and Elena Green. I understand this is a fault-based divorce case. Lucas stood. Yes, Your Honor. We're filing on the grounds of adultery. Elena's sharp intake of breath was audible, even from across the room. Judge Hayes nodded. Very well. Mr. Barton, please present your case. For the next hour, Lucas laid out the evidence of Elena's affair in excruciating detail. Emails, text messages, and photos flashed across the screen, each one a dagger to my heart. As you can see, Your Honor, Lucas concluded, Mrs. Green engaged in a prolonged, deliberate affair with her student, Troy Henderson. This affair not only destroyed her marriage but also cost her her job and professional reputation. Judge Hayes turned to Elena's lawyer. Miss Holt, your response. Jessica Holt stood, smoothing her skirt. Your Honor, while my client acknowledges her indiscretion, we can contest the division of assets proposed by Mr. Green. Elena contributed significantly to the marriage, both financially and as a homemaker. She shouldn't be left destitute because of one mistake. I couldn't hold back my bitter laugh. One mistake. Try 6 months of lies and betrayal. Judge Hayes fixed me with a stern look. Mr. Green, please. Miss Holt, continue. Furthermore, Jessica pressed on, we request joint custody of Emma. Despite her lapse in judgment, Elena has been an excellent mother. Lucas was on his feet in an instant. Your Honor, given Mrs. Green's demonstrated lack of judgment and the upheaval in her life, we believe sole custody with Mr. Green is in Emma's best interest. The arguments bounced back and forth, each side presenting their case. Through it all, I kept my eyes fixed on Elena, watching her squirm under the weight of her actions. Finally, Judge Hayes held up a hand. I've heard enough. Given the evidence presented and the egregious nature of Mrs. Green's infidelity, I'm inclined to rule in favor of Mr. Green. Mr. Green will retain the family home and primary custody of Emma. Mrs. Green will have visitation rights to be determined. As for asset division, Mr. Green's proposal stands. Elena gasped, her face crumpling. But that's everything. Where am I supposed to go? What about Emma? Judge Hayes's voice was firm. Mrs. Green, you should have considered these questions before engaging in an affair with your student. My decision stands. Court is adjourned. As the gavel fell, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I turned to Lucas, shaking his hand. Thank you for everything. He nodded, a small smile on his face. You're welcome, Marcus. It's not over yet, but this is a big win. I looked over at Elena, who was sobbing into her hands as Jessica tried to console her. Part of me wanted to go to her, to offer some comfort. But then the memories of the photos, the lies, and the betrayal flooded back, hardening my resolve. As we left the courtroom, I spotted Troy, his face pale and drawn. Our eyes met, and I could see the fear lurking there. Good. He was finally beginning to grasp the consequences of his actions. I took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling like I could finally breathe again. The divorce wasn't final yet, but I had won this round. Elena had taken so much from me, but now I was taking it all back. The next phase of my plan unfolded over the following weeks. Sitting at my computer, my fingers hovered over the keyboard as I prepared to send the first email. This was it, the point of no return. You sure about this? I muttered to myself. The memory of Elena's betrayal flashed through my mind, threatening to steal my resolve. With a quick movement, I hit send. Within hours, my phone buzzed non-stop. Elena's colleagues, our mutual friends, even some of my co-workers, everyone was shocked, disgusted, and full of questions. I answered a call from Dr. Foster, Elena's former department head. Marcus, is it true? The things in that email? I sighed, feigning reluctance. I'm afraid so, Amelia. I wish it wasn't. My God, I knew about the affair, of course, but this? The other students, the grade manipulation, I can't believe it. Neither could I at first, but the evidence doesn't lie. As I hung up, another call came in. This time, it was Jenna Roberts, a local journalist I'd tipped off. Mr. Green. Jenna Roberts from the Daily Chronicle. I received your email. Is now a good time to talk? I smiled grimly. Now's perfect, Jenna. What would you like to know? For the next hour, I spilled all the sordid details of Elena and Troy's affair, the power imbalance, the ethical violations, the suspected academic fraud. By the time I was finished, Jenna was practically salivating. This is explosive, Mr. Green. Mind if I quote you? Be my guest. The truth needs to come out. As I ended the call, I noticed a text from Rachel Matthews, Troy's ex-girlfriend. Just saw the news. Damn, Marcus, you don't mess around. I typed back, they made their choices. Now they deal with the fallout. The next morning, Elena's face was splashed across the front page of the Daily Chronicle. Professor's illicit affair rocks university, the headline screamed. My phone rang, it was Elena. How could you, she sobbed. Do you know what you've done? I kept my voice cold. I've done nothing but tell the truth, Elena. Something you should have tried. I've lost everything, my job, my friends, my reputation. And whose fault is that? You did this to yourself. What about Emma? Did you think about how this would affect her? That hit a nerve. Don't you dare bring Emma into this. You should have thought about her before you started sleeping with your student. I hung up, my hand shaking. Emma, my sweet, innocent daughter, caught in the crossfire of her mother's betrayal and her father's revenge. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I opened it to find Rachel standing there, a sympathetic look on her face. "Hey," she said softly. "I saw the article. Thought you might need a friend." I stepped back, letting her in. "Thanks. It's been intense." Rachel settled on the couch, her eyes searching my face. "How are you holding up?" "Really?" I sank down beside her, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know. Part of me feels vindicated, but the rest feels like crap," she finished. I nodded. "Pretty much. I get it. When I found out about Troy and Elena, I wanted to burn the world down. But Marcus, are you sure this is the right way?" I met her gaze, my jaw set. "They deserve this, Rachel. Both of them." She sighed. "Maybe, but at what cost?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a news alert. I opened it to find a video of Troy, looking haggard and desperate, being accosted by reporters outside his apartment. "Mr. Henderson. Is it true you were involved with multiple professors? Did you blackmail anyone for grades?" Troy pushed past them, his face a mask of panic. "No comment. Leave me alone." I showed the video to Rachel, a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. "See? They're getting exactly what they deserve." Rachel watched, her expression troubled. "And what do you deserve, Marcus?" "Peace. Healing. Because I gotta tell you, this doesn't look like either." Her words hit me harder than I expected. What did I deserve? What did I even want anymore? As Rachel left, promising to check in on me later, I was left alone with my thoughts. The satisfaction of revenge was there, but underneath it all, a hollow ache remained. Would any of this really make things right? I looked at a photo of Emma on the mantel, her smile bright and carefree. "I'm doing this for us," I whispered. But even as I said it, a small voice in the back of my mind wondered if that was really true. The summons arrived on a Tuesday morning, the legal jargon barely registering as I scanned the document. Elena and Troy were suing me for defamation and emotional distress. I should have seen it coming, but the reality still hit me like a punch to the gut. I called Lucas immediately. "Have you seen this?" "Just got my copy," he replied, his voice calm. "Don't worry, Marcus. This is a desperate move, and they know it. But can they actually do this after everything?" Lucas let out a dry chuckle. "They can try, but given the evidence we have, this lawsuit is dead in the water. In fact, it might work in our favor." I frowned. "How so?" "It shows they're not taking responsibility for their actions. Plus, it opens them up to countersuits. Trust me, Marcus, we've got this." As I hung up, another call came in. It was Rachel. "Hey, I just heard about the lawsuit. You okay?" I sighed. "Yeah, I guess. Just when I thought it was over. Want some company? I could bring over some takeout. We could strategize." I hesitated. Rachel had become an unexpected source of support through all this, but I wasn't sure I was ready for company. "Thanks, but I think I need some time to process this." "I get it. Just don't shut everyone out, okay? You don't have to go through this alone." Her words lingered in my mind as I prepared for the first hearing. The courthouse was becoming all too familiar, the weight of eyes on me as I walked in with Lucas by my side. Elena and Troy were already there, huddled with their lawyer, Jessica Holt. Elena looked up as we entered, her eyes red-rimmed but defiant. "Marcus," she called out. "Can we talk, please? This has gone too far." I started to brush past her, but Lucas placed a hand on my arm. "Hear her out. It might be useful." Reluctantly, I turned to face my soon-to-be ex-wife. "What is it, Elena?" She took a shaky breath. "This lawsuit, it's not what I wanted, but you've left us no choice. You've destroyed our lives, Marcus." "Over what?" "A mistake." I felt my temper flare. "A mistake? Is that what you're calling 6 months of lying and cheating?" "I know I hurt you," Elena pressed on. "But this? Humiliating us publicly? Ruining our careers? What about Emma? Have you thought about how this affects her?" The mention of our daughter hit me like a physical blow. "Don't you dare bring Emma into this. You should have thought about her before you started sleeping with your student." Troy, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "Mr. Green, please, we're not denying what we did was wrong, but your actions." I cut him off with a harsh laugh. "My actions? That's rich coming from you, kid. You knowingly pursued a married woman, your professor, no less, and you want to talk about actions? Jessica Holt intervened, her voice cool. Mr. Green, I'd advise you to watch what you say. Every word can be used in court. Lucas stepped in, his presence a calming force. And I'd advise your clients to drop this frivolous lawsuit before they embarrass themselves further. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a hearing to attend. Inside the courtroom, Judge Karen Hayes looked tired as she called the session to order. Counselors, present your cases. Jessica Holt went first, her voice dripping with rehearsed sympathy. Your Honor, my clients have suffered immense emotional distress and damage to their reputations due to Mr. Green's vindictive actions. While they acknowledge their indiscretion, the public humiliation orchestrated by Mr. Green goes far beyond the bounds of reasonable response. Judge Hayes turned to Lucas. Mr. Barton, your response. Lucas stood tall, his posture confident. Your Honor, this lawsuit is nothing more than a desperate attempt by Mrs. Green and Mr. Henderson to avoid the consequences of their actions. Every piece of information made public was verifiably true. My client cannot be held responsible for the natural repercussions of their choices. The arguments went back and forth, each side presenting their case. Through it all, I kept my eyes fixed on Elena and Troy, watching them squirm under the weight of their actions laid bare once again. Finally, Judge Hayes held up a hand. I've heard enough. Mr. Barton is correct. The information made public, while damaging, was factual. Mrs. Green, Mr. Henderson, your personal and professional difficulties are a direct result of your own actions. This lawsuit is dismissed. Elena gasped, her face crumpling. Troy looked like he might be sick. Judge Hayes wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm inclined to view this as a frivolous lawsuit. Mr. Green, should you wish to countersue for legal fees and additional damages, the court would look favorably on such a motion. I turned to Lucas, who nodded slightly. Your Honor, I said, standing, I think enough damage has been done. I won't be pursuing further legal action at this time. As we left the courtroom, I felt a mix of emotions, relief that the lawsuit had failed, satisfaction at Elena and Troy's defeat, but also a lingering unease. When would it be enough? Outside, Rachel was waiting, a supportive smile on her face. Hey, warrior, how'd it go? I sighed, suddenly feeling the weight of the past few months. We won again, but it doesn't feel like winning anymore. Rachel nodded, understanding in her eyes. Maybe it's time to stop fighting and start healing. As we walked away from the courthouse, I pondered her words, wondering if it was finally time to put the past behind me. I pondered her words. The revenge had been sweet, but the aftertaste was bitter. Maybe it was time to focus on rebuilding my life, on being there for Emma instead of tearing down Elena and Troy. Yet, as I glanced back and saw Elena sobbing into Troy's shoulder, a small part of me whispered that there was still more to be done. The war wasn't over yet. The morning sun streamed through the blinds as I sat at my desk, poring over financial documents. Months of digging had led to this moment. I picked up my phone and dialed Lucas. Lucas, it's Marcus. I found something. What is it? Lucas's voice crackled through the speaker. Hidden assets. Elena's been squirreling away money for years. Offshore accounts, dummy corporations, the works. Lucas let out a low whistle. That's big, Marcus. How much are we talking? Millions. And that's not all. I've uncovered some questionable transactions between Troy and several professors. It looks like fraud. Damn, we need to move on this fast. I'll set up a meeting with the forensic accountant. Can you come to the office this afternoon? I glanced at my watch. I'll be there at 2. As I hung up, a text from Rachel popped up on my screen. Hey, how's it going? Wanna grab lunch? I hesitated before replying. Rain check. Something big just came up with the case. Her response was quick. No problem. Good luck. I arrived at Lucas's office promptly at 2. The forensic accountant, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah, was already there. Lucas greeted me with a firm handshake. Marcus, this is Sarah Chun. She's the best in the business. Sarah nodded. Mr. Green, I've reviewed the documents you sent over. It's quite the web your wife has woven. We spent the next few hours going through the financial maze Elena had created. With each revelation, my anger grew. So she's been planning this for years? I asked, my voice tight. Sarah nodded. It appears so. The earliest hidden account dates back to the beginning of your marriage. Lucas leaned forward. Marcus, with this evidence, we can nail her for financial fraud on top of everything else. And as for Troy's involvement, I added, we need to inform the university. Exactly. This goes beyond just your divorce now. We're looking at potential criminal charges. I stood up, pacing the room. Do it, all of it. I want every cent accounted for in the divorce settlement. Lucas's eyes met mine. And Troy? I felt a grim smile spread across my face. Let him burn too. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal motions and meetings. I sat across from Elena and her lawyer in a mediation room, watching the color drain from her face as Lucas laid out our findings. This is ridiculous, Elena sputtered. You're making things up now, Marcus. I leaned forward. Am I, Elena? Cayman Islands account number 87294, opened June 15, 10 years ago. Ring any bells? Her eyes widened in shock. How did you? It doesn't matter how. What matters is that every penny is coming out in the open now. Elena's lawyer, Jessica, tried to regain control. These are serious allegations, Mr. Green. We'll need time to review and respond. Lucas smiled coldly. Take all the time you need. But know this, the forensic accountant's report has already been submitted to the court and to the IRS. Elena's face crumpled. Marcus, please. You can't do this. What about Emma? Don't you dare bring Emma into this, I snapped. You should have thought about her before you started hiding money and sleeping with your student. As we left the mediation room, I felt a mix of satisfaction and weariness. The end was in sight, but at what cost? Later that evening, as I nursed a drink in my quiet house, my phone rang. It was Detective Sam Pierce. Marcus, it's Sam. You sitting down? Because I've got some news about your boy, Troy. I straightened up. What is it? Remember those transactions you found? Well, they were just the tip of the iceberg. This kid's been running a great fixing scheme across half the university. I nearly dropped my glass. What? Yep. Blackmail, bribery, the works. And guess who was helping him cover it up? Elena. I breathed deeply. Got it in one. Marcus, this is big. Like, federal investigation big. As I hung up, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Triumph, yes, but also a deep, aching sadness. How had it come to this? I dialed Rachel's number before I could think better of it. Marcus, everything okay? Her voice was warm and concerned. Not really. Can you come over? I could use a friend right now. An hour later, Rachel sat across from me on the couch as I poured out everything that had happened. God, Marcus, she whispered when I finished. That's a lot. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. I wanted revenge, Rachel. I wanted them to hurt like I was hurting. But now, she reached out, squeezing my hand. Now you're wondering if it was worth it. Yeah, I mean, they deserve what's coming to them. But Emma, this is going to destroy her world too. Rachel was quiet for a moment. You can't control their actions, Marcus. You can only control how you respond. Maybe it's time to focus on healing for you and Emma. As Rachel left that night, her words echoed in my mind. The war was nearly won, but at what cost? And what would victory even look like in the end? The courthouse was packed, reporters jostling for position as Elena and Troy were let in. I sat in the back, watching the scene unfold. Judge Karen Hayes called the court to order. We're here today for the sentencing of Elena Green and Troy Henderson on charges of academic fraud, financial crimes, and blackmail. ADA Bennett, you may proceed. Victoria Bennett, the assistant district attorney, stood. Her voice rang out clear and strong. Your Honor, the state has uncovered a web of corruption that goes far beyond a simple affair. Mr. Henderson, with the aid and complicity of Professor Green, engaged in a systematic scheme of grade fixing, blackmail, and fraud that has compromised the integrity of the entire university. Elena's lawyer jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. My client was unaware of the extent of Mr. Henderson's activities. Judge Hayes raised an eyebrow. Overruled. Continue, ADA Bennett. Victoria nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. Over the past 3 years, Troy Henderson has been involved in affairs with no fewer than 5 professors, using these relationships to manipulate grades and academic standing. But it didn't stop there. Mr. Henderson also blackmailed other professors, threatening to expose personal information unless they complied with his demands. A murmur ran through the courtroom. I saw Elena's shoulders slump as the full weight of Troy's actions became clear. Victoria continued, Professor Green, far from being an unwitting victim, actively assisted Mr. Henderson in covering up these activities. She used her position and influence to silence potential whistleblowers and manipulate university records. I watched as Troy's face contorted with rage. Suddenly, he leapt to his feet. This is bull. Elena knew everything. She was the one who came up with the idea in the first place. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Judge Hayes banged her gavel. Order. Mr. Henderson, sit down immediately. Elena whirled on Troy. You lying little snake. I never. Enough. Judge Hayes's voice cut through the din. Mr. Henderson, Professor Green, control yourselves, or I'll have you both held in contempt. As the commotion settled, I caught sight of Detective Sam Pierce slipping into the courtroom. He nodded to me before taking a seat near the front. Victoria Bennett cleared her throat. Your Honor, in light of Mr. Henderson's outburst, the state would like to call a surprise witness, Detective Samuel Pierce. Elena's lawyer was on her feet again. Objection. We weren't informed of this witness. Judge Hayes considered for a moment. Given the new information that's come to light, I'll allow it. Detective Pierce, please take the stand. Sam walked to the witness box, his face grim. After being sworn in, he began to speak. Your Honor, my investigation into Mr. Henderson and Professor Green's activities uncovered a pattern of behavior that goes back even further than we initially thought. I have evidence that Professor Green was involved in similar schemes at her previous university. Elena's face went ashen. I leaned forward, shocked by this new revelation. Sam continued, furthermore, we've discovered that Mr. Henderson was not the initiator of this scheme, as he claims. Emails and financial records indicate that Professor Green approached him with the idea shortly after he joined her class. The courtroom was dead silent now, all eyes on Elena. She seemed to shrink in her seat, the weight of her lies finally crushing her. Judge Hayes's voice was steel. ADA Bennett, do you wish to amend the charges? Victoria nodded. Yes, Your Honor. In light of this new evidence, the state moves to charge Elena Green as the primary defendant in this case. The rest of the hearing passed in a blur. By the end, Troy had turned state's witness against Elena in exchange for a reduced sentence. Elena, faced with overwhelming evidence, accepted a plea deal that would still see her spending significant time in prison. As the courtroom emptied, I found myself face to face with Elena for the first time in months. Her eyes were hollow, defeated. Marcus, she whispered, I'm so sorry. For everything. I looked at her, this woman I had once loved, now a stranger. I'm not the one you need to apologize to, Elena. Think about Emma. Think about all the students whose lives you've affected. She nodded, tears streaming down her face as the bailiff led her away. Outside, reporters swarmed around me. Mr. Green, how do you feel about the outcome of the trial? I held up a hand. No comment. Please respect my privacy and my daughter's. As I pushed through the crowd, I saw Rachel waiting by my car. Her presence was a balm to my frayed nerves. Hey, she said softly. You okay? I shook my head. I don't know. It's over, but I don't feel like I've won anything. Maybe winning wasn't the point. Maybe it was about the truth coming out. As we drove away from the courthouse, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was both an end and a beginning. The question was, where did I go from here? Months passed, the media frenzy died down. Elena began her prison sentence, and Troy faded into obscurity. I threw myself into being there for Emma, trying to help her navigate the aftermath of her mother's actions. It was a crisp fall day when I found myself walking through the park, lost in thought. A voice pulled me from my reverie. Mr. Green. Marcus. I turned to see a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She looked vaguely familiar. I'm sorry, I said. Do I know you? She laughed softly. Not really. I'm Isabel Turner. I'm Emma's English teacher. We met briefly at the last parent-teacher conference. Recognition dawned. Of course, Ms. Turner. I'm sorry, I've been a bit distracted lately. Understandable, she said. And please call me Isabel. How are you doing? How's Emma holding up? I sighed, finding myself opening up to this near stranger. It's been tough. Emma's struggling, but she's strong. Therapy's helping. As for me, I'm taking it day by day. Isabel nodded. That's all any of us can do. You know, Emma talks about you a lot in class. She's proud of you, of how you've handled everything. I felt a lump form in my throat. Really? Really? You're doing a good job, Marcus. Don't forget to take care of yourself too, okay? As Isabel walked away, I felt a small spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Later that week, I met Rachel for coffee. She grinned as I approached our usual table. Well, look at you. You're actually smiling. What's the occasion? I shrugged, feeling slightly self-conscious. No occasion, just feeling better, I guess. Rachel's smile softened. I'm glad, Marcus. You deserve some happiness. We fell into easy conversation, discussing her new job, my latest software project, anything but the drama of the past year. As we were finishing up, Rachel's expression turned serious. Marcus, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. I tensed. What is it? I've been offered a job in California. It's a great opportunity, but I wanted to know how you felt about it. I blinked, surprised by the mix of emotions her words stirred up. Wow, Rachel, that's great. When would you leave? Next month, if I take it. I just wanted to make sure you'd be okay. You and Emma have become such a big part of my life. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. We'll miss you, but you can't pass up a great opportunity. We'll be fine, I promise. Rachel's eyes welled up. You've come so far, Marcus. I'm proud of you. As we said our goodbyes, I realized that Rachel's imminent departure didn't fill me with the dread it might have a few months ago. Instead, I felt a sense of gratitude for her friendship and excitement for her new adventure. The next few weeks flew by. I focused on work, on Emma, on rebuilding our life. And if I found myself looking forward to parent-teacher conferences more than usual, well, that was nobody's business but my own. It was at one of these conferences that I found myself lingering after the other parents had left, chatting with Isabel. Emma's doing much better, Isabel was saying. Her essays show real depth and maturity. I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. She's amazing. I don't know how she stayed so strong through everything. Isabel's hand brushed mine as she handed me Emma's latest paper. She takes after her father, I think. Our eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. I cleared my throat. Isabel, I was wondering, would you like to get coffee sometime? Outside of school, I mean. Her smile lit up the room. I'd love to, Marcus. As I left the school that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. The pain of Elena's betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it no longer consumed me. I had survived, grown, and maybe, just maybe, I was ready to love again. The next weekend, I took Emma to the park. As we sat on a bench, watching the ducks in the pond, she turned to me. Dad, are you happy? I looked at my daughter, this incredible young woman who had weathered so much. You know what, Em? I think I am. Are you? She nodded, leaning her head on my shoulder. Yeah, I mean, I still miss Mom sometimes, but I'm glad we're okay. I wrapped my arm around her. We're more than okay, kiddo. We're survivors. As the sun set over the park, I thought about the journey we'd been on, the pain, the anger, the thirst for revenge. It had all led to this moment. I had lost a wife, but I gained something far more valuable, a deeper connection with my daughter, true friends, and the knowledge that I could weather any storm. The future stretched out before us, full of possibility, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it might lead. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe to the channel to watch my next videos and share with me your opinion, what you would do in my place.